Okay, so welcome to today's social system mapping on-ramp session for April 10th, 2023. Your hosts today are me, Christine Capra, co-founder of Sum Mapping Greater Than the Sum, and Kara Martner, co-producer, producer, and assistant, and lots of things here, Greater Than the Sum. So what this is it's a vision about a possibility. So the possibility is that this thing called social system mapping, and we're going to look at a social system map in a moment, that social system mapping is can help change networks, transformation networks, communities become self-organizing more quickly and can become more effective than they might be without a social system map. So it's a learning opportunity to learn about social system map, both how to make them, how to socialize them in a community, how to get value from them, how to help people understand the possibility of them. And it's also a community of practice. So this is a shared learning experience for all of us. There's parts of this puzzle that we're all working, that we all have a different perspective on and share with each other. And lastly, so it's about social system mapping, which is a kind of map, but not everyone involved with the social system map needs to be a technical mapper. There's a number of roles that are necessary in social system mapping and within the community of practice. And so not everyone is so it's not about I have to be a mapper to be a part of this community practice. It's about this has to be a meaningful context for me and something I want to contribute to. So everyone is invited for whom that's the case. So for today's agenda, we're going to do chat intros in a moment. I'm going to walk us through the human systems dynamics map. Then we'll open it up to questions and answers. And actually, I think we'll skip the optional post-session half hour today because I have some stuff I need to deal with that asks me to fit it in. So I'm going to, and since we're a small group, I'm going to not do that part. So for the chat intros, especially Rebecca, since you get the honor of being our new person that the rest of us don't know. So our goal is to make you feel welcome and to make space for you to fit in. And so I'm going to ask everyone to put put their name, location, and pronouns into the chat, and for starters, so that you can know who all is here and they can know you. And then also, let's have you put in what's one primary network that you're part of or that you're working on. Sort of what's the network context that brings you? So Rebecca's working on environmental activism. Brian's working on economics, donut economics. Jim, relational coordination collaborative. And don't have systems change mapping, social systems mapping, and other social change networks. So thanks for that. All important change initiatives. And then what brings you here today? And here comes Bill. Stop sharing. So that was an invitation in the chat also to just say what's the prompt for showing up today? Something you want to learn, something you want to share, something you just want to hang out. Continual learning for most of us. Bill, welcome. If you'd like to do a quick mic check, I invite you to do that.
Mic check, mic check.
Got it. And I see you did put what brought you here today. So great, thanks. And Rebecca has a network, some people to visualize. So yay, that's fun. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and finish the presentation. So Rebecca, especially for you, so a social system mapping. So this is sort of when you're making a social system map, there are basically two different separate technological platforms that we're working with. I don't know if this is familiar, if you are familiar with the two platforms. I'll just a little bit, and I'll just give a super simple high level. So the tool that we use to represent and visualize those contacts and connections, or the people within the network, is Kumu. Kumu is a data visualization platform designed to work with graphs. So a graph mathematically is the dots and lines business. And so Kumu is available to anyone. It's free unless you want a private map, in which case it's $10 a month. And it's interactive, so you can make it available to anyone in your network. And the fun part about a Kumu is that you can build in filters, or people can click on a node and see more information about each node. They can click on a line and see more information about that connection. So that's what we use for data visualization. The big challenge with visualizing people and their relationships is gathering the data. So SumApp was a tool that was built by my partner and I. It was designed to be able to gather that data directly from people in the network. And so we're not inferring relationships, we're actually asking and getting validated relationships. So SumApp is the tool we made for that, which is meant to be as user-friendly as possible for the network, and to sort of accommodate all the various technological aspects needed for making a really good map in Kumu. And for keeping, and another thing about SumApp is that it's you can we call it evergreen. You can continue to gather data, you can change questions, you can add more questions. So it can emerge and evolve as you're over time, as you learn more about what you want to see in your map. So that tool is SumApp. So the data is gathered in SumApp. It's structured in the background specifically to work with Kumu. And so we gather the data in SumApp. It goes through a live link directly into Kumu automatically. Once you get it set up, there's a bit of a setup piece for someone like maybe you would be a project administrator. So you get SumApp set up, you put the link to Kumu. You'd make some design decisions in Kumu about how you want to represent your data. And then once you have a map that you feel good about, you take the embed link from Kumu and put it back into SumApp, so that your users don't have to they don't have to see two platforms. They don't have to deal with two platforms and two logins. They just have one platform that has both the map and the data gathering tool combined. So it's pretty seamless for them, and it's so seamless to look at on the face of it that I spell it out, because so that people who are actually making maps understand that they make it in two separate places and end up with this relatively seamless interface. So we all know me. I'm going to present today the Human Systems Dynamics map, which is, I'm going to stop that. So Human Systems Dynamics, do you guys know HSD, Rebecca, Bill?
Do I know who?
Human Systems Dynamics, are you familiar with that? Glenda Ouyang's work?
No, sorry, I'm not.
No, it's okay.
I was looking at it this morning. I am blown away by how wonderful a place it is.
It is pretty cool. So Rebecca, just for your, so you have a little bit of background in what I'm going to share with you. Glenda Ouyang is, they live in Forest Lake, somewhere sort of just a little north and east of the Twin Cities.
Yep. I know Forest Lake.
I think it's Forest Lake. It might be another suburb. I think Forest Lake is that direction. I'm not super familiar with the suburb. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not great with the suburbs, but at any rate, they don't live far from the city, from the Twin Cities. And Glenda started studying and teaching about systems thinking more than 30 years ago, and developed sort of a school of a way of approaching systems thinking, especially in the context of human systems. Started out, working with organizations a lot, but her work has been expanded to, I mean, it's applicable to any kind of human system. So whether it's a marriage, a body, a government, a nation. And the thing that I really like about human systems dynamics, I mean, I like Glenda a lot, but also her approach. She comes from a family of educators. She's got 3 sisters, so there's 4 girls in this family, all of whom are teachers. And so they have a very hands-on, applicable, making it accessible kind of approach to systems thinking. So it's far less abstract and sort of out there and hard to understand, and far more concrete and useful. So human systems dynamics is she's had this institute for nearly 20 years, and or no, I think it is 20. They just had their 20th anniversary. And I'm a practitioner, a certified practitioner of human systems dynamics. And another practitioner, a member of our community, Lisa Negstad, and I made a map, a social system map for the Human Systems Dynamics Practitioner Network, I don't know, roughly 5 years ago. So I'm going to share that map with you today. And the reason I'm sharing this map is a lot of the social system maps that have been made are private. And so finding a map every month that's not private to share with the community of practice, so people actually can see a real map, and walk through it and ask questions. There just aren't that many available. And so and this is one that I have perpetual permission to play with, plus it's public. So that's what we're doing today. So I'll pause and see if either of you have questions before I jump into walking through the map. No questions.
No, I remember now. I mean, this may come up later, but I remember now, when Bill and I were talking about this before, after we met with you, one question I had is, how do you get, if it's going to be continuously updated, how do you get permissions for people to be part of the map, and because of the privacy issues and so on? It's like, what kind of things like that come up? But I'm sure that comes up. So that's what all of a sudden I'm prompted to remember what was sticking for me before. It's like, oh yeah, how do we, like if you're working with immigration systems and people have private information and it could be dangerous for them to be public, that kind of question. But I realize that that's way down the line.
No, I'm going to go there right now. Since it's up for you, we'll just go there. So, and we're not a big group, and Bill's your friend, so I'm just going to presume that it's okay for me to do that. So, fundamentally, the paradigm that we're coming from is one where people opt in, where they choose to put themselves on the map. So they're implicitly giving permission. We do have a little technical thing in some app that says I agree to the like what we call a terms of agreement checkbox that doesn't let people go forward unless they check off the terms of agreement. So you could put you could make that that permission more explicit using the terms of agreement thing. Often the only way people get in the map is by choosing to put themselves there. So that takes care of that at the very simplest level. It doesn't take care of anything. What I'm saying is our philosophy is that you don't want to be mapping people who haven't given permission. Like, you don't want to be stealing people's data. It can get more complex than that, but another piece of that puzzle is that most of the maps, like I just said, are private maps. In Kumu, you make it so that the map is private, and how that works is that only people who have access to the map, or only people who are on the map, can have access to the map. So what's hard to do is to say, I'm going to be on the map, but I don't want anybody else on the map to know I'm on the map. Then that doesn't work. So there's still a level of shared information that's going on.
Thank you.
Okay. But that is, I mean, part of what we're, one thing that happens is that we do have networks where where privacy can be a life and death, or, spend a lifetime in prison kind of an issue. And so it is really important. And often people will say, well, why can't you don't need to make people go through all these hoops. Why can't you just like pull their LinkedIn data or whatever? And it's like, well, A, it's different, but B, I just lost what I was going to say. We're not, I mean, in making people opt in, we're looking at a finite population. We're not just looking at the whole world and, what are they doing on Twitter? We're trying to make a secure, defined population. So, okay, so I'll go ahead and walk through this. So this particular map is of HSD practitioners. So there's like I don't know, several month program that it's a lot of work that you go through to get certified. And this map is for people who are certified as HSD practitioners. We started, like I said, we started it 5 years ago. They add, let's see, I don't remember where we were, but something's not working right. But so they add, as every new cohort comes through, they add the new population onto the map. They're not super actively using this map. For them, it's more a showcase of who's been through the program. People get to opt in. I don't think everybody who goes through the program, I know that not everybody who goes through the program is on this map. And there's a lot of potential here that I think we could get more from. It just hasn't been a priority. So, so that's the way it is. But so this is our first, so often when we're looking at a social system map can include a lot of information, it can be it's a very complex data set. There's a lot of dimensions. It changes over time. There's just a lot going on. And for people who aren't familiar with this kind of mapping, it can be pretty overwhelming. So they look at it and, like I've had people say, I looked at it and it made me feel sick to my stomach, or I showed it to a room full of people and they got scared, things like that. So, so one of the things that we've learned to do over the years is to start with a relatively simple view and go to more complex views. So in Kumu, all the views this is one data set, but we're presenting it in different ways. So we can make a view, that only shows the purple people, or a view that, shows people, different sizes based on their connections, etc. So this is what we call the directory view. It's a relatively simple view, doesn't have the connections. So it doesn't like overwhelm people with the, the spaghetti pile of connectedness. And so these are the people in the network. If people want to, they can it's got a problem with their picture, but they can upload a picture of themselves. So you can see that not everybody has, but a lot of people have. And if we click on a person, we can see this data is what is coming out of SumApp. So there are questions in SumApp. There's a survey saying, what's your gender, generation, country, sector, etc. Where are you in your HSD journey? And so the members answer those questions, and clicking on them makes those questions visible. And we can also filter by any of the questions that are categorical, where it's a predefined list and they just check it off. We can make a filter for that. So in this instance, we could say, I just want to see everybody who's in the UK, and we can filter out everybody who isn't. Actually, they're in, William, the reason I realized something wasn't working right, that I have to double check when we're done here, is that they're actually in 60 something. The cohorts now is like 63. They just started 63 or 4, I think. I was in cohort 58. So yeah, they've been doing this for a long time. They've gotten, it's evolved, it's gotten refined, they have, yeah. So, what else? So whatever so another question in the survey was, what are your interests? So we can say, I want to see everyone who's working with diversity, equity, and inclusion, or I want to see everybody who's working in embodied leadership, et cetera. So we have, and these are all custom. So you define what are the questions, you define what are the dimensions that are relevant in your network. So this is, again, the directory view, which is a starting point which people can, I think I'll pause, Jim, and invite you if you feel like it. Don't feel like you have to, but just you're good at talking up the directory view. So I'm gonna see if you'd like to do that. And maybe you're not even, okay, you're not videoing, so he might not be there. That's fine. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. But so the directory view is a great place, is just great for both network staff and network members to sort of use as a directory, just to be able to find people with various criteria. Another view that we often have in a social system map is the generic name we call it is the offers and asks view. So that if we're working in a network, there's probably certain things that people come to the network needing help with or wanting from the network, and things that they come to the network being willing to offer the network. And so in this, and that could be anything from, all kinds of resources. In this particular context with HSD, the way it was thought of initially was help with, so HSD has a number of what's called models and methods. So, 3 kinds of change, or the strategic adaptive action, or same. These are very like simple but powerful models and methods that can be used for thinking about a human system. And some of them are pretty, everyone learns, and uses all the time. And some of them are a little more less, like useful only in specific situations, or just they're not sort of the common go-to models and methods. And so what Glenda was looking for was, let's say, I'm a new HSD person and I want to use the architectural model, and frankly, I'm not sure I remember what that even is. And I might say, okay, I'm looking for help with the architectural model. I think I need to use it in a certain context, and I need to find someone who will help me understand how, or I might want to just interview 5 people who use the architectural model all the time and say, how do you use it? What is it good for? What would you, et cetera. So this is a learning opportunity. I can just click on the architectural model. I can actually filter down or focus in on just that particular model, and then we'll see that the dark line means this is a model I use often, so I'm familiar with this, I'm good at it. And then the dotted line means I would like to practice this more, I would like help with this. So you can use, so the offers and asks view can be used by network guardians or network staff to find what's a hot topic, or what's a need that a lot of people have. If there's a model and method that has more people attached to it, that might be a thing where Glenda would say, okay, we're going to do a specific session just aimed at this particular thing. And then I might invite these 3 people who say they use it all the time to lead the session or to help facilitate the session. So that's one way an offers and asks could be used. Another way is a staff person could say, I'm going to, pick an offer and ask and just do some introducing, saying, Rebecca, you should know Mary because Mary said Mary's good at this, and you said you needed help with that, just to do some, what we call in network weaving, closing of triangles. Another thing is anyone in the network has access to the map. And so I can say, I'm looking for help with X, go on the map, you know, pick that model and method and just reach out to the people on the map also and say, hey, I see you said you're good at this. Would you be willing to spend half an hour in a call with me, giving me some pointers? So that's how the offers, what we generically call the offers and asks view, that's how that is manifesting in this particular context. But it could be, you know, there could be all kinds of other ways that that manifests as well. But it's basically about something that we believe that a lot of people in the network might want stuff, you know, from the others and might be willing to offer stuff, and so that we can match up on those. So that's the offers and asks view. I'm going to just pause and see if there are any questions before I go to the next view. Actually, I'm going to go here. Rebecca?
No, I'm getting all the ideas about views or lenses to look at different sets of data from.
Yeah, that's what I'm wanting. And thank you for saying that, because I didn't make that explicit what I was doing. But, you know, we have, like I said, it's one data set. We represent the data in different ways. So we might want to be telling, you know, we might want to look at it in a way to tell a particular story or to present a particular set of possibilities, or just like let people find things. So we might have different ways we want to display the data. We make views for each way, and then down the side panel, these are the different. So there's the directory view, the models and methods. So I've walked you through those two views so far. So when you see a map that we've made and you look on the side panel, you can see, you can know that each of these is a different view that we can go look at. And just to reiterate, what I meant was we default. So when you first open the map, it defaults to the simplest view, but then we sort of make the next most commonly used and, you know, least confused, you know, the simplest, from simple and commonly useful to more complex and more less often used views. So that's kind of the order that we do in the side panel. So that was the offers and asks views. Then we have we call this either the involvement view or their interpersonal connections view. This is where it looks most like a social network analysis map with some differences. But so this is where we're looking at all the relationships within the network. And so if we, you know, we can click on a person and see their responses. We can also click on a line between them and see. So this is the relationship between Stefano and Lane, and they have shared information or ideas with this person within the last year. That was in 2020, I'm guessing. No, the last time this was updated was in just about a year ago. So you can see information, and depending on the map, this map has just one connection dimension. But if you look at our community of practice map, we've got a number of questions about the relationship itself. So you can see more information about a relationship, not just how strong I categorize it, but, you know, what do we do together? A little story about the relationship, etc. So Bill's asking, what is name from and to? You're talking about here. Okay, so this is the person who answers this, who is reporting on this relationship. So this is what Stefano is saying about his relationship with Lane. If Lane had answered this question, which apparently he didn't, because Lane doesn't look super engaged with this map. But if Lane had responded, there would be another line going from Lane to Stefano, and that would contain what Lane thinks about the relationship. So I'm going to point out an interesting thing since you asked. I'm going to focus. So this is Glenda, and
so Glenda is the node in the center.
Yeah, she's the you know the founder of this method of human systems dynamics, of the whole the whole institute, the whole thinking. So I mean, she's interpreting complexity thinking and systems thinking from a bunch of different angles, but she's the one distilling it down to this particular way of approaching systems thinking in human systems. And I'm just looking for a place where, okay, so we can see there's Glenda and there's Donna. Hang on. And I'm selecting both of them. And now I'm going to focus down. Oops, I didn't do that right. Hang on. I was going to make a point being, where did Donna go? Okay. So Donna says that her relationship to Glenda is she's shared information in Glenda in ideas with Glenda in the last year. But what Glenda is saying, no, that's Glenda reporting on her relationship with Donna. But what Donna was saying was a slightly lesser strength relationship. And so what we do in social system mapping is we don't, sometimes people say, can you average that out? Like if I think the relationship is strong and someone else thinks the relationship is not strong, can we just show an average so that we don't hurt anybody's feelings? And that, A, we don't do that. I mean, technically that would be super not in our will capacity, but B, that sort of fuzzifies a dynamic about the relationship that might be really important to explore, might be valuable to understand. And when you can start to see places in the network where there's that differential, you can make some inferences about, is that about a support relationship, or is it about, for, you know, there's ways that, anyway, I'm not going to go there. It's a valuable thing to understand, to start to think about and understand that we all have a different perspective of a relationship and we all hold it differently. And sometimes that might be something that is worth exploring. But that's it.
But the width of the line, like it looked like from Glenda's line, it was wider than some of the other lines.
Yeah, that's how I could quickly identify. That's what I was looking for was, you know,
The width of that dark line of
Yeah.
the line. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing we can do here is we can filter on the strength of connection. So if we say we just want to see people who are collaborating with one another currently, we can filter out all the other connections, and then we can just see current collaborations.
So how does the movement, what does the movement of those nodes indicate? Oh, a time frame, say over a year's time?
No, the movement indicates, so this is Kumu again. Kumu is the data visualization.
Yeah.
And Kumu is placing all the nodes on the canvas. The background is called the canvas, is placing all the nodes on the canvas based on an algorithm, or based on the math in the connections.
Right. Okay.
So as I remove connections from the canvas, it's got to rearrange them.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the interpersonal view, or the connections view. You can start to see that there are some sub clusters, but like in many cases, Glenda is quite central in this network. This is her sister Royce, and this is Mary has worked with them for years. And but there are some also separate clusters that of course are connected to Glenda. So those are things that you look at with social network analysis. Then we have some other views that are probably too, I'm going to say, messy and maybe not working right because it's been a long time. So I'm going to leave it at that and just stop presenting and start answering questions or hearing your thoughts. Stop sharing. So I know you've been asking questions, but are there more now? Or especially Bill and Rebecca?
Well, okay, so would you suggest to begin getting proficient in this kind of technology to start with human systems dynamics itself as a concept, or a founding system, at least one that you're very related to, or can you start from a different point of view? Like I just say a point of view, I could identify 10 or 20 people that want to be part of this network and we could try it out
Yeah,
I could say we need to know more about how our network of environmental activism connects with, say, the general. Okay, my general idea is to connect environmental activism with other aspects of peace and justice work, like disarmament work or immigration reform work. But in my belief is that there's going to be a lot of interconnections that could be very interesting for people to realize that the movement that they're part of is part of a much bigger movement
Mhm.
of
Yep.
social reform or whatever we want to
Yep.
call it.
Yep.
So how would you suggest I get started with, say, Bill and I finding, if Bill wants to do this, to people in our networks that would opt in or think they would opt in anyway. Of course, they can always opt out. I guess there's also the opt out.
Yeah.
Or would I start just trying to learn the Kumu graphics method first?
Yeah, I would. So actually, we're next week, I'm gonna talk about getting started and survey development. So we'll
Okay.
go deeper into that next week. But just as a high level response to your question at the moment, I would start. I mean, this is the longer I've done this, the in some ways the further back in the more preliminary the starting point gets. But it would not be human systems dynamics. It would be convening some people in that you think would be part of this network and sharing with them the vision of a social system map. So sharing a map with them, a public map. You could use Glenda's map. Sharing I have what we call the explainer graphic, or I've presented a couple times in some previous sessions, sort of the vision of how social system mapping works, or our theory of how it works. Would share a map, the theory, and then sort of facilitate an exploration of what could we do with this? How could this support us? Is this something that we think would help us do the kind of work that we want to do better? Or would it be a support or not? And with an eye to like sort of prompting something like inspiring some curiosity in them about what it could make possible that isn't possible without it. And so my experience is that if you can't get at least a small handful, a few people actually inspired to think this is worth doing, it's not worth doing, because it requires the people who are going to be on the map to see some kind of value in it. And they don't have to see the whole big picture. They don't have to be systems thinkers, but they do have to have a sense that there's something in there that they can't get otherwise, and they're willing to engage and share their data, at least update the survey periodically.
Right.
And if it feels like you're not able to inspire even that much for whatever reason, because of the context, because of where their focus is, then I would say it's not worth your energy and time.
Thank you, Christine. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. And I'm going to mute myself.
No, you can unmute. I mean, you can.
No, I meant that. I think I that's really great. And I'm so grateful to be here and to hear that, because I need to either get going with finding a group of people, which is kind of intuitively what I think I knew already. But now that I know a little bit more, and it feels a little bit more doable, and I love seeing the 2-dimensional graphs with all this 3-dimensional data put into 2 dimensions. I mean, even mathematically, it's just a fascinating thing to me. But I'll have to see if other people think it's worth it. And I can see now it will take some time. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so the SumApp piece is there's a lot of variables to getting it set up, but it's fairly simple. That's the easiest, simplest piece of the whole puzzle.
Okay.
Dealing with Kumu, there's a learning curve. And for some people, learning how to deal with Kumu, they just never get there. It's like they just need some help. They need to find somebody who's a little more technically savvy and get some support from them, because Kumu can be a little daunting if you're not, thanks, Jim. If you're not, if you're just not really comfortable working with software tools and stuff, you might want help. One might want help with that. But having said that, so SumApp is the easiest. Kumu is the next biggest challenging point, but really the social processes are both the most carry the most potential, the greatest leverage points, the most value, but also the least codified. We're still learning what those social processes need to be, and they take work. I mean, they are the work of creating a network. I mean, they are, a big chunk of the work of creating the network. So it's aligned with the work you want to do, but it is work. And this additional layer of work, it takes a certain kind of mind, keeping certain things in mind and cognitive effort to do. So that's the first thing, is make sure you're doing it make sure the context deserves it and wants it before you put that work into it. And at the same time, it's worth thinking this, especially the social part. Those things are worth thinking about, even if you don't implement an app. They'll help you think about your intentions and your goals and your context more deeply.
Right.
Yeah.
I think with human systems dynamics, you might want to look at containers, differences and exchanges, because what you're thinking about is differences of moving, starting with the environmental activism and including more difference in the work, so looking at that probably would be helpful.
Yeah, Kara, can you in the follow-up email, can you include like a recent sense-making session where we covered CDE? Rebecca, the other thing I was going to say is social system mapping is not built on human systems dynamics. I mean, human systems dynamics is not like the foundation of social system mapping. It's another angle into it. And as you get started and as you start to work your map and understand your system better, it can help you think a lot more deeply about what's going on and as well as what you're mapping, as well as a map can help you see some of these things that human systems dynamics will make you want to see that you can't see in another way in a network context. But they're sort of complementary. Not one isn't necessary to the other. They both can stand alone. And we do on the first Monday of every month, we have what's called a sense-making, basic sense-making session, where usually I introduce some bit of a model or method or HSD theory and relate it to either network weaving or social system mapping. So that's a way of sort of getting, the really low-hanging overlap, being able to get.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to take advantage of that. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts coming up? Or Brian or Mary, anything you'd like to add to amplify what I said?
The only thing I want to add is that I really like what Bill said about Danella Meadows' leverage points. And the thought came to my mind is that the higher you go up with those leverage points, the greater the need for a social systems map. If you're at the very top, you definitely need to have a social system map or something, of the similar nature in order to implement those paradigm changes. I mean, you can do it by yourself at the very bottom when you're just, making barriers or whatever else type of thing. But at the very top, you need to be able to come together with other people and make a map. So I just want to add that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I don't know how we're doing for time, but I'd like to continue with that aspect of the conversation if we can.
Sure. Yeah.
Because one of the things that draws me so much to this community is the culture that I encounter here. there's a hospitality here that I find really refreshing and wonderful, and it meets my need for that kind of a new way to connect. And I'll relate it to what I think of as emergence, as an emergence as differentiated from patriarchy, white supremacy culture, and other things that I had been indoctrinated into and didn't realize, oh my gosh, I was trained in the toxic masculine, and I was trained in patriarchy and trained to be a white supremacist. Well, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know the language to name it. And inside those things, so often naming those things then puts me in a position where I become a traitor in a system that's not healthy for us. So this community offers me a liberation, I'll say. I think. I hope. That's kind of my hope for. And it seems like it's I use dissociation as a coping mechanism. This seems to kind of dissociate enough so that we can look at what's possible without causing too much harm and without surfacing too many traumas all at once. So that's kind of one of my intrigues about this approach to living together. It's a virtual space, which it's okay. I'm all right with that because I like technology. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not that good at it necessarily, but with some training, I'm still trainable. But I like this space, so I'm gonna just stop talking with that all having been said, hoping that makes some sense.
Thank you. Yeah, I think part of the vision of social system mapping is that it enables us to maybe not dissociate, but take enough of a step back to depersonalize some of the dynamics that we see so that we can see, because we can be in a network and believe that our perspective, our vision of the network, or our understanding of what's going on is the truth. A social system map can help us see that it's only part of the truth, and there are other angles of the truth, and it can help us step back and start to explore, in a less personalized way, what is the collective truth that we can see here right now with people who have a different perspective. And there's not a lot to argue about. You can say, well, we don't, maybe they didn't answer the question. That's true, but it's true, they didn't answer the question, so we don't know that. So there's not really a lot of, it can help sort of reduce some of the triggering around seeing realities that are different. And it is still a reflective tool. It isn't the network. It isn't reality. It isn't our embodied living truth. It is, like we like to say, it's a living reflection, but it can be kept up to date if people are willing to do that. But it's not like the difference between the finger pointing at the moon and the moon. Like it's not the finger, it's the moon. We're looking at it, which has value. But yeah, the other thing that was coming up for me just as you were talking was that for me, part of the point of social system mapping is to get to that paradigm change. And so we're not just going to map and then be together in the same old ways, like be together in dominating, extractive, exploitive ways where we actually have to, as a culture, practice living, engaging with each other from different mindsets if we want to bring those mindsets to our mapping practices and communities. So thank you for seeing that. Doesn't always, being right smack in the middle of it, it doesn't always feel like that's happening or that we're accomplishing our aspirations, but yeah.
So I've got a question about this? Is this something that's meaningful in
Um,
this environment?
Probably I have seen that title. I haven't read that book and I haven't seen the cover. But I've seen the author's name and the title. So I mean, there's a lot of, like adjacent potential thinking. And part of what we do is to just, each of us has an angle into this shift that we're trying to make. And so we all have a different perspective, and we all bring different schools of thought or different fields of study, and, finding, without forcing everybody else to learn my methodology or my paradigm, or, my current, topic du jour, without forcing everybody else to have to get it, be equally as conversant in that as me. We try to find ways of distilling what's useful in that and sharing the useful pieces with the community, because there's a lot out there, and we like to be informed by all of that. And we're also doing a very specific thing on the ground, which is not any one of those, but it's this. I don't know if that answered your question.
It helps me. I also wonder then about the getting up to speed on the language of this culture, and best ways to have glossary of terms. I'm finding is a little dangerous, but more about what's the language of the understanding of the key ideas in this culture. We don't have a sacred text here, I don't think, right?
Well, we have some things that
Okay.
that we've been working on, but they don't have a glossary. And I'm chuckling because we have a mapping team, and we just added a new member to the mapping team. And last Monday she was saying, well, it's gonna take me a little while to get to know what all the words mean, like when you guys are talking. And I said, maybe you should write down what the words are that you don't know, and we'll make a glossary out of it. I mean, the topic of a potential glossary did just recently come up.
Oh,
Which yes, a glossary can be dangerous, but we do use words that not everybody recognizes how we mean them. Yeah, Rebecca.
And I wrote down a few things that I will want to find out about. Like you mentioned an administrator and then guardians of the map. So already I'm
yeah.
thinking, oh, there's some interesting roles here.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can play a role, well, yeah, that's what I meant. So that might be part of the glossary terms too. It's just like, what do you need to get started with a map? And now I know you need at least, you need some people that are interested enough and understand enough about it. That might want to try it out as an experiment. And I'm experimental kind of person. So I have to find some other people that I already have, I'm just excited now to get started to see if we can do that. And then I realize that there'll be a lot of work. So I have to make it clear to people that this is not just, something to do at a party. We're going to put our names in a hat and be part of a map. So, but another thing that might be helpful is because you mentioned about, everybody wants something else to come out of this mapping work, and some stories about from people that on this call, they've been doing this a long time, and perhaps, and like, what was a story about some people that you met, or some action that you took, or some change in your thinking that happened as a result of the mapping. And there could be a little section on just stories of how this affected people.
Yeah, and you're pointing out one of the roles in a social system mapping ecosystem. So we say there's 4 hats. We used to say 3 hats, but now we say 4 hats. One hat is the visionary. So you're in the visionary stage, and being able to impart the vision and inspire people to be excited and want to engage with a social system map. That's where it all starts. And so you can't get very far without a visionary, because you can't get the people involved unless you've got someone who's wants to and able to play that role. So that's the first hat. Second hat is the technical, or the technician, or the mapper hat, which is the person who can set up some app, who can put views into Kumu, who is comfortable dealing with the technical aspects of mapping. And
Mhm,
then for the longest time, we said then the third role was the sense-making role. And
mhm.
that's the place where knowing a little bit of human systems dynamics is helpful, understanding, just whatever approach, whether it's HSD or other, network weaving is a school of thought that is very connected to what we do. And we're not doing network weaving, we're doing social system mapping. But if if that's you can't really get very far without some kind of clear thinking about how to weave a network, what it is you're trying to do and how to do it. So that's the sense making role, where you're actually using the map to get value, to read, to do sense making together with your community. And then the fourth role that we've added in the last, 2 years is the storytelling role of,
Okay.
yeah, like looking for the stories in your community of, both just stories of success around the network itself, stories of success around how the map has helped those things come about, stories about, why you're making changes to the map, etc. So that is, and it's also the least, like we haven't much, we've done a tiny bit of storytelling in this community practice, but this is not a developed role in our community because we're still figuring out our community practice, how it fits together and how it works. So, but yeah, you're pointing to a real important piece of the puzzle. There was another thing you said in there, which I was gonna,
Oh, the guardians and the administrators.
well,
Even within the mapper role number 2 or stage number 2 or whatever, there must be other roles within that stage then.
yeah. And this has to do with the glossary.
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, I have my strongest advice, my biggest feeling about this words business is in any given context, where people meet and come together frequently, they start to have a shared language. Anytime you go into a different context, the language is different. I think sometimes we hear words that sound familiar, and so we're interpreting as if we know what they mean, but often they mean something different in a different context anyway. And so this is a thing that I think, like, people who've traditionally been marginalized have a habit of showing up and listening carefully and trying to understand something contextually and not just based on this is the word that always means that. So there's like a word dominating behavior that I sometimes think that people will engage in, and they'll, like, I used to work with strategic planners, and you could just go on forever about what's the difference between the vision and the mission, or what's the difference between this and, like attack. And I would just be like, wanting to, my head wanted to explode, because it's just like, it matters what you four people know what you're doing and do it. It doesn't matter what the actual word is unless it helps you. But if all it does is make you pull apart or get lost down linguistic rabbit holes and never get anywhere, it's not helpful. And so partly because you were saying like administrator and guardian, and I was like, yeah, guardian comes from June Holly's universe. I feel like if we just get a sense into what probably is meant, that's maybe as much as we can ever really have in a context where we're not there all the time anyway. And being comfortable with that, like like I once, anyway, I won't go there, but people who are marginalized, have been marginalized, no, they're going to have to do a little bit of work to not cling to the words, but to check out the context and feel their way into, is this what's meant or is that not what's meant? And I think all of us getting better at that would be a good thing, as opposed to spending a lot of time trying to codify and nail down language, which just doesn't nail it. It isn't nailed onable in any case. So we just do the best we can. That's which doesn't mean we can't make a glossary, because I still think some words would be helpful for us to say, they're pointing to this or they're pointing to that. And that's where that's coming from, as opposed to, here's what I was starting with, and I'll shut up in a second. I was thinking really what matters is your context, like your group. If they want to say convening, if they want to say hosting, if they want to say planning, if they want to say steering, if they want to, whatever it is they want to say, that's the word, unless it's misleading. And then you need to get clarifying. That's the word to go with, not our words. Like, our words are just to help you feel oriented here, but they're not to impose on any other group. That's where I was starting. I just did a big long lecture. Okay. Yes, Bill,
Can I respond to your lecture?
sure, briefly, and then you should go.
I will. I'm excited about what you pointed up because that's kind of what I was teasing out. And I have an article that I can share with you on that difference between words and terms and what happens when we're not as generous in our orthodoxy about the words
Mhm.
or the terms rather.
Sure. Be great, yeah.
Words are like more organic and terms tend to be
Uh-huh.
more confining.
Yeah.
So I think your value, I think, is a generosity and a hospitality. So I want to just celebrate that. Your style is very meaningful. And it draws me in. Okay. So
Well, thank you.
that's enough from me on that.
Thank you. It can be the opposite as well. I just want to be
understand.
honest. It's not a monolithic presence.
We've spent some time together, so I understand, but I appreciate you.
Thank you. Mary, were you gonna chime in? You unmuted. Now you're muted.
I can't remember. I mean, several things have come up. And in terms of language, of starting with what you have, just the word steering, sort of brought up the opportunity to, if your group uses the word steering, to bring the opportunity to change the way you think by evolving to a different sort of picture and not use the word steering group, or that would be a good discussion.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. I think we'll wrap it up unless there's anything. Brian, did you have a last thought or no? You're good? Okay. Thank you so much, Bill. Feel free to send me that article and or put it in our Slack somewhere so that everybody can see it. That would be great. And cool.
Thanks so
Great.
much. Good to meet
Thank
you all. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.